So what was the War of 1812? During the Napoleonic Wars there was a large yet forgotten war between the years of 1812 and 1815, which saw the United States of America go to war against the British Empire, also known as the Second War of Independence. It was a war Britain didn't expect nor want, since they were busy fighting against Napoleon's empire starting on the same year Napoleon invaded Russia, as well as conflicts that have been passed aside and forgotten over the Napoleonic Wars, including the gunboat battle between Denmark and Norway fought between 1807 and 1814, and the Anglo-Russian War fought between 1807 and 1812, with some other very minor conflicts all over the world. Britain did all this while managing their empire, which at the same time stretched from Canada all the way to New Zealand, which is where the term "the sun never sets on the British Empire" came from. On the American side, it was a war that seemed to be a lust for blood, land, and was fought with unclear goals. During the conflict, it was never clear whether the USA intended to annex part or all of Canada. The following events are believed to be the cause of the conflict. The reasons for the USA declaring war on Britain had been sown during the Napoleonic Wars, when the USA had declared itself neutral from the European wars, a tradition that would continue all the way to World War II. This also led to the French being angered with the USA, as it felt it was a poor repayment after the French had supported the Americans during the American Revolution. To make relations even worse, between 1758 and 1800, an undeclared naval war was fought between the USA and France, with battles between warships and attacks on merchant shipping. In the following years, the relationship between Great Britain and the USA was that of a nervous tension. The Royal Navy also blockaded the trade between France and America and forcibly recruited sailors from US ships intercepted at sea. Another reason that contributed to the war was the Americans accusing the British of stirring up trouble in Canada. Many of America's native tribes were also in support of the British Empire, as they were opposed to the expansion of the USA in the Northwest. Another major factor was the War Hawks, who were members of the Congress, many of whom were aggressive advocates of America's expansion, who sought war with the British and Native Americans in order to expand and protect the interests of the USA. Overall, the War of 1812 was caused by a series of economic sanctions that were enforced by the British and French against the USA and the mindset of the American government as a whole. The army of the USA at the start of the War of 1812 was ill prepared to fight, with a small standing army that relied heavily on state militias that only numbered 5,000 to 10,000. It was also supplemented by short-term volunteers, but throughout the war that number rose to almost 300,000 soldiers. However, President James Madison was convinced that these forces would be adequate enough to occupy Canada, which was possible in theory as the majority of Britain's resources was concentrated on the war in Europe, leaving few forces to garrison Canada. The total strength of the British Army in Canada in 1812 was numbering almost equal to the 5,000 of the USA, while the number of British troops engaged in Europe at this time was around 250,000. These forces were made up of regular British soldiers, Canadian militia, and native tribal troops in alliance with the British. The regular British Army were far better trained and experienced than most, if not all, of the US military at this time, while the natives provided support, unique abilities, and key intelligence, which enabled the British to carry out battle plans in terrain that they were not used to and the British Army was not capable of performing well in.